Welcome to the twin videos of reporting instrument development and validation in mixed methods research. The video 364 deals with quantitative instrument development and validation. And similarly, video 365 is about qualitative instrument development and validation. That is part 2 of this video. So, welcome to reporting quantitative instrument development and validation in mixed methods research. So, in this talk, we will be discussing introducing instrument development and validation. Secondly, quantitative instrument development, and thirdly, quantitative instrument validation. Remaining 3 parts will be discussed in the next video, the talk 365. So, section 1 is about reporting the development and validation of instruments in mixed methods research. So, let us discuss how we report the instrument development part of the report or thesis or article. This part is combined, means it represents both quantitative and qualitative component. Let us see. Due to mixed methods nature of this study, 2 separate instruments were developed and validated. A structured questionnaire for the quantitative component and a semi-structured interview protocol for the qualitative component. The development of each instrument was guided by the research objectives grounded in the conceptual framework and informed by established methodological procedures to ensure the rigor and credibility of the data collected. Let us see, 2 things have been described in part 1 of this slide, that is about 2 components of the study. One is qualitative and other is the quantitative. So, 2 distinct instruments have been developed for the both. Second part of this slide tells us that the development of the instruments was guided by, one, the objectives of the study, second, a conceptual framework, and third, the methodology involved. So, let us focus on the section 2, which is about quantitative instrument development. You know that the qualitative instrument development is part of our next video, that is 365. So, see, the report is about developing the quantitative questionnaire process and rationale. You know that we always give rationale with the process, whether it is instrument development or it is the population or the data collection or the sample selection or even the topic selection. The questionnaire was developed to quantitatively assess teachers' perceptions and practices regarding classroom assessment. So, the focus of this study is assessment of classroom assessment. Its development followed the systematic scale development process proposed by Churchill 1979, which involves defining the construct domain, generating items, collecting pilot data, purifying the scale, and assessing reliability and validity. You know, it is an iterative process. If after following this process the desired result is not achieved, then we repeat the steps required to be repeated for the development of a valid scale. Let us see. The next point is about defining constructs and generating questionnaire items. So, how we report this part? The first step was to define the construct domain based on its extensive review of relevant literature and conceptual models of formative and summative assessment, particularly Black and Williams 1998 framework. So, see that everything has been described in black and white, no ambiguous sentences are there. So, on the basis of review of relevant literature and the conceptual models of both formative and summative assessment, 3 dimensions were identified. First one is planning of assessment, second is implementation of assessment, third is provision of feedback. So, let us come to the generation of items. An initial pool of 45 items was generated to capture the breadth of each dimension. These items were formulated as Likert scale statements to facilitate quantitative analysis. Care was taken to ensure clarity, relevance, and consistency of wording across items. So, in generating these 45 items, once the dimensions were kept in mind, and secondly clarity of the items, thirdly relevance, and fourthly consistency of wording were kept in mind. Now we come to the expert review and pilot version of questionnaire. The draft instrument or questionnaire was reviewed by 3 senior education researchers or experts or professors with expertise in educational assessment and measurement. What the experts did, they evaluated each item for relevance, representativeness, and clarity. Simple writing of review is not sufficient. It is necessary to write for what the items were reviewed. So, the items in this questionnaire were reviewed for relevance, representativeness, and clarity. Whether the items were relevant to those 3 domains, do they represent the domains and the construct, and are they clear enough to be understood by the respondents? Based on their feedback, 5 items were removed due to redundancy. Redundancy may be that 2 items ask the same thing, or the item is ambiguous, or the item is not seems to part of that very construct or representing that very construct. And several others were revised for improved readability and alignment with the construct definitions. So the items must fall in definitions of the construct and the subconstruct. They must be readable and they should be aligned. This resulted in pilot version comprising 40 items. So initial 45 items, after addition and deletion there were 40 items. So no proposition is there after comprising. Now we come to the section 3, that is about validation of the quantitative instrument. So pilot testing and item analysis of questionnaire. The pilot questionnaire was administered to a sample of 50 teachers from schools similar to those targeted in the main study. So these teachers were similar but not part of our sample. Data from pilot study were analyzed to refine the instrument and assess its psychometric properties. So you know that in pilot study, data is used to validate the instrument, not to draw the conclusions. So the data were collected in this study to refine the instrument, to fine tune the instrument, and to know the psychometric properties. Psychometric properties means reliability, validity, and such other things. Item analysis was conducted to examine the discrimination power and internal consistency of each item. Items that exhibited low item total correlation less than 0.30 were considered weak indicators of their representative constructs, as they contributed little to the overall reliability of the scale. So the items having weak item total correlations less than 30 were eliminated. These items were removed to improve the homogeneity of the subscale, so that there are homogeneity means the similarity, being similar to each other. Now we come to the exploratory factor analysis for construct validation. You know, factor analysis actually helps us to validate the construct. In addition to prior steps, an exploratory factor analysis using principal axis factoring with varimax rotation was performed to examine the underlying structure of the questionnaire. This video is about reporting. The detailed discussion of it is part of the instrument development itself. Second paragraph of this slide is the EFA or exploratory factor analysis was conducted to determine whether the items clustered into factors that align with the 3 dimensions identified in theoretical framework. Those were planning, implementation, and feedback. So the exploratory factor analysis actually helped us to find out whether the factor analysis gives the same 3 dimensions of the questionnaire, planning, implementation, and feedback, as supported by the theory. Third paragraph of this slide, the items that exhibited problematic cross loadings defined as loading significantly equal to or less than 0.40 on more than one factor are not loading strongly equal to or less than 0.40 on single factor were eliminated. So a single atom who was loading on 2 factors was eliminated due to ambiguity. And similarly, an atom which is weakly loaded on any of the factors was also eliminated, as such items can compromise the interpretability of the factors and introduce measurement error. If the ambiguous items are part of the scale and they cause measurement error in the scores of the very scale. Now, come to the final structure and evidence of construct validity. After this iterative refinement process, as said earlier, this is iterative refinement process. If you think that after 3 or 4 steps things are not as clear as they are supposed to, then go back and repeat the steps required to be repeated to get the valid results in terms of the final form of the instrument. A final version of the questionnaire consisting of 35 well-performing items was retained. So you know that we started from 45 items which became 40, and after EFA or exploratory factor analysis they are 35 now. The EFA or exploratory factor analysis results reveal a clear 3-factor solution with each factor corresponding to one of the theorized dimensions. You know there were 3 theorized dimensions. The factor loadings for the retained items were all above 0.50 on their respective factors. You know, if any items loads less than 0.50 on any factor is eliminated, because there might be loading another factor which is not part of our study. So again, the factor loadings for the retained items were all above 0.50 on their respective factors, indicating strong associations between the items and their intended constructs. So if the factor loading is 0.50 or more, it shows strong loading on the factor. The last paragraph of this slide is, this pattern of results confirmed that the structure of the questionnaire was consistent with conceptual framework, providing evidence of its construct validity. If the exploratory factor analysis gives the same factors clearly which were theorized, it means that our scale and our scores have construct validity. Now we are at reliability and validity of the questionnaire. The internal consistency of the final instrument was also assessed using Cronbach alpha. The overall alpha was 0.86, while the reliability coefficient for the 3 subscales ranged from 0.78 to 0.91, indicating high internal consistency. If you want to know the detail about the reliability and validity, you can watch another video which is on the channel which describes the reliability and validity in details. Construct validity was established through the expert review process, ensuring that the items adequately represented the intended constructs. You can get this version of the questionnaire again reviewed by the experts. These systematic steps ensured that the questionnaire was both valid and reliable for quantitatively measuring teachers' assessment practices. You know, there were 6 headings under discussion. 3 have been described in this video. The rest of the 3 are part of the next video, which is 365. Those 3 components of the next video are qualitative instrument development, qualitative instrument validation, and concluding remarks of course. Concluding remarks are of both quantitative and qualitative instrument development and validation. Thank you very much for being with me. See you in the next video 365.